So, oh, so I love music. I don't know if you can tell, but I do. I love to sing. I wish I played an instrument. I don't. Oliver told me recently that he thinks that he and I should take guitar lessons together. He told me, when he told me that, he said that he had already talked to Tom and Fran about it, so they've been colluding. I love to listen to music. I think, I don't think a week is complete unless you've heard at least one Beatles song and some Pink Floyd. I just love music. And I find a lot of inspiration in music. I find, from various genres. I actually preached a whole sermon series on the lyrics of Alice Cooper songs. Anyway, that tells you where I am. Pentecostal, yeah. A person that I've been listening to for the last little while, off and on, is John Legend. John Legend is a kind of a blues, R&B kind of singer. Did the soundtrack for Selma, the movie about the race issues in the States in the 1960s. He played Jesus in the latest iteration of Jesus Christ Superstar that was on TV. And he has a song, it's called All of Me. And it's written to his wife. But one of the lines in the song really struck me as I was thinking about today's readings. Because it says that he loves her in all of her perfect imperfections. Perfect imperfections. We're not perfect. And I'm sorry to those of you who were accepted or welcomed into the congregation today, but you are not perfect. None of us are perfect, and the reality is that God does not call perfect people. God does not call saints into the mission and the ministry of the gospel. God calls us in all of our perfect imperfections. God knows that, you know what? There are going to be days when we go out and we just have that absolute necessary word. We're going to know exactly how to reach out to somebody because we're inspired. But God also knows that there are going to be days when we're walking the path and we're going to trip. We're going to fall. We're going to do something ridiculous. We're going to do something that any other time we would go, why would I do that? God knows that we are not perfect. And so in the letter of Paul, like Paul's letter to the people of Colossae, he says to them that since he heard about them, since he heard about their faith, since he heard about the ministry that they were about, he has been praying for them, upholding them, and upholding not only them, but the people. Paul says that to almost, in the midst of almost every letter, Paul says to the people he's writing to, I am holding you in prayer. I am uplifting you. I have heard about your faith, but I am holding you, and I am traveling with you. I am supporting you in the same way as Jesus does for the church. And Paul says that not only is he holding them up and praying for them, but they have a responsibility to hold up and to pray for their neighbors. Because Paul knows, and Jesus knows, and God knows that there are going to be days when no matter how much we know of the grace of God in our lives, we are going to struggle. Now, Another artist that that I really like, I love this Lauren Daigle. Daigle. Anyway, she's pretty popular. Like, her songs are on the pop charts, but they are so spiritual and faith-filled. One of her songs, You Say, and I pull out my handy-dandy box that tells me everything I need to know when I need to know it. The chorus of the song says, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I feel I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling apart or falling short. And when I don't belong, you say I am yours. Those words, I remember the first time I heard them, I was sitting in my backyard, just listening to this song, and the profound nature of those words. Because she's singing to God. She's singing this hymn to God, that she knows that in her deepest, darkest, most difficult times of struggle, that when she couldn't feel her own worth, when she couldn't grasp her value, that God saw something deep underneath, rooted, and that because she has this faith, because her faith brings to her the grace of God, out of those deep, dark moments, she's able to rise out and to know her value, to know her worth, to know that no, she doesn't deserve it, and this is true for all of us. We don't deserve it, but we are all recipients of God's grace. And how do we know that? We know that because of our interactions with each other. You will hear when I pray, when I offer the pastoral prayer, often I will end the prayer by saying, you know what we're praying for. You know the prayers of in the depths of our hearts. And so we offer them humbly, but we also offer ourselves to be the answer to the prayers we are suggesting, or that we're offering to God. To be the answer. So there are people today who are waiting, who are in some ways dying, to know that they are loved by God. Who need to know that even though they have fallen, they've wandered off the path, they've made mistakes. They've made mistakes. They need to hear the word that they are loved and they are recipients of God's grace. And the way that they hear those words, the way that becomes part of their lived reality, is if we are the answer to our prayer. Because our prayer as a community is that everybody be uplifted, that everybody be strengthened, that everybody knows the incredible gift that is ours, this gift of faith, this gift of grace. But the only way that some people will hear that message is if we tell them. If when they walk through the doors of the church or they walk into the Embrace Center, that we offer them that gift of faith, that gift of grace. So I was watching the news this morning as I was getting dressed, and there was a story on CBC about a guy living in Vancouver. He was dumpster diving because he's living on the streets, and dumpster diving because he thought he might find something that could get him his next fix, is what he said. So he found this print of Bambi. Yeah, Bambi, Disney, deer running with Thumper. Okay, so he found this print, and he took it to a pawn shop, and the guy who owned the pawn shop gave him $20 for it. $20. So that's pretty good. But the guy who owned the pawn shop took a closer look at it and found that it was an original cellulite or whatever it is, like an original thing from the movie. He got it valued, and it was worth $3,600. So this guy who owned the pawn shop got it, sold it for $3,600, and then drove the streets of the Lower East Side of Vancouver to find this guy. When he found him, finally, after days of driving around trying to find him, he split the money with him. So instead of $20, he got $1,800. And with the other $1,800, the guy who owned the pawn shop bought clothes, toiletries, got him an apartment, got this guy an apartment. So he basically gave this guy the $3,600. And then he started a GoFundMe page. And on the GoFundMe page, he raised almost $18,000. Now the guy who was living on the street, who was dumpster diving, trying to get his next fix, has a drywall business. And he's employing people who he knew who were living on the street. So here's this guy who owns a pawn shop, and I will be honest to you, I have often said disparaging things about people who own pawn shops, because I think that they exploit. But here's a person who I would have spoken disparagingly about on another day, who has transformed another person's life. Transformed another person's life by one simple act of kindness. And I will say, by simply living out the gospel. I don't even know if the guy's a Christian. I don't care, actually. I hope he is. But by living out the gospel that is absolutely living out the gospel we proclaim on a Sunday morning. And that transformed a man's life. And will probably transform other people's lives because of it. Now, the guy who was dumpster diving, I'm sure he didn't think he was worth anything on the day he was dumpster diving. Our job, when Reverend Cheryl talked about, joining this congregation, there are rights, there are privileges that we have being a member of this congregation. We get to vote at annual meetings, and we get to do stuff. But we also have responsibilities. Our faith, Christianity, is a gift. The understanding, the realization of God's grace in our life is a gift. But it brings with it this tremendous responsibility. In the words of the psalmist, to share the story with our children so that they will then share it with our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and our great-great-grandchildren. But we have a responsibility to live the gospel we proclaim, to bring the good news to people who are hungering and thirsting for God's presence in their lives, to share the gift of grace, to not only be graceful, but grace-filled, and in some way grace emptying ourselves of the grace that has been given to us, because we are confident that as we share it, we will be replenished. As we offer it to others, we will in turn be nourished. God promises to be with us. God promises to continue to nurture and nourish and feed our souls. As a community of faith, let's be courageous in sharing that gift with others. Let's go to Pride, and let's go to the Ridge Fest, and let's go to Boo at the Zoo, and let's go and be absolutely ridiculous in our raising our voices and reminding people who are only coming to the table because there's a free sucker that they are loved by God, that they have God's grace in their lives, and that they can share that grace with others, and they can change someone's life. And let's pray that we have done the same, because at some point in our lives, someone did it for us.